with the second paragraph, actually, of the Reconstruction. I'm calling this this series the Restoration of the Reconstruction, and it's a bit audacious of me. It's a bit kind of presumptive of me but I have been studying this for a long time, and it is a wealth of inspiration, like I've said many times. But I think I'm getting somewhat of an understanding. It deals with a lot of deep things, controversial things, so it's a little bit dangerous territory. That's why I've been putting off doing this for so long. But I don't think anybody really is. There's too little interest and too little investigation being taken place, and so it's just a kind of stirring the interest. Sometimes you have to stir. Let me carry on anyway. The search for rational foundations in Islam may be regarded to have begun with the Prophet himself. His constant prayer was, "God, grant me knowledge of the ultimate nature of things." So right from the start of this paragraph, Iqbal is saying that rational studies are sanctified, within Islam, and he gives the proof of this, which is the dua. I should have got the Arabic out, but it's I think it's to show me the reality of things as they are. The work of later mystics and non-mystic rationalists forms an exceedingly instructive chapter in the history of our culture, inasmuch as it reveals a longing for a coherent system of ideas, a spirit of well-hearted devotion to truth, as well as the limitations of. He talks about the limitations of the age, and these. So carries on, which rendered the various theological movements in Islam less fruitful than they might have been in a different age. So why were the earlier ages less fruitful? Iqbal goes on to say, largely it was the fault of Greek philosophy. As we all know, Greek philosophy has been a great cultural force in the history of Islam. Yet a careful study of the Quran and the various schools of scholastic theology that arose under the inspiration of Greek thought disclose the remarkable fact that while Greek philosophy very much broadened the outlook of the Muslim thinkers, it on the whole obscured their vision of the Quran. Socrates concentrated his attention on the human world alone. To him, the proper study of man was man, and not the world of plants, insects, and stars. How unlike the spirit of the Quran, which sees in a humble bee a recipient of divine inspiration, and constantly calls upon the reader to observe the perpetual changes of the winds, the alternation of day and night, the clouds, the starry heavens, the stars swimming through infinite space. As a true disciple of Socrates, Plato despised sense perception, which in his view yielded more opinion and no real fact. We've got a bit of a storm going on today. I think this is a little bit. I'm somewhat suspect of Iqbal's view that Plato despised sense perception. How unlike the Quran, which regards hearing and sight as the most valuable divine gifts, and declares them to be accountable to God for their activity. Now, a lot of Greek thought really is, how would you say, disembodied reason. The belief that we can access the system of the universe, the mind of God, through our rational faculties alone, and senses such as sight, hearing, feeling. These somewhat muddy our access to divine rationality. And this is why there is some credence to Plato despising these. I think later Neoplatonists certainly despised it, and kind of this. So this is why we hear of Christians who kind of subjecting themselves to great hardships, such as sitting on top of pillars and things like that. So this type of thought is, so that's an extreme of disembodied reason. But the idea that the mind of God is known really primarily but through accessing, the rational faculties, that could be classed as classical knowledge. This is what the earlier Muslim students of the Quran completely missed under the spell of classical speculation. They read the Quran in the light of Greek thought. Took them over 200 years to perceive, though not quite clearly, that the spirit of the Quran was essentially anti-classical. The full result of this perception was a kind of intellectual result, the full significance of which has not been realized even up to the present day. It was partly owing to this revolt and partly to his personal history, that Ghazali based religion on philosophical skepticism, a rather unsafe base for religion and not wholly justified by the spirit of the Quran. Ghazali's chief opponent, Ibn Rushd, who defended Greek philosophy against the rebels, people such as Ghazali, was led through Aristotle to what is known as the doctrine of the immortality of the active intellect, a doctrine which once wielded great influence on the intellectual life of France and Italy, but to my mind is entirely opposed to the view that the Quran takes of the value and destiny of the human ego. This is a really important point. It's crucial to the whole book. You really, it becomes clearer what's being said here as you read the book. The view was that we merge back into a larger intellect, and this individualized experience is inauthentic, whereas the reabsorption into the created active intellect, this is more authentic. So, in a sense, our individuality, existential individual, is undermined. Thus, Ibn Rushd lost sight of a great and fruitful idea in Islam and unwittingly helped the growth of that enervating philosophy of life which obscures man's vision of himself, his God, and his world. The more constructive among the Asharite thinkers were no doubt on the right path and anticipated some of the more modern forms of idealism, yet on the whole, The object of the Asharite movement was simply to defend orthodox opinion with the weapons of Greek dialectic. The Mu'tazila, conceiving religion merely as a body of doctrine and ignoring it as a vital fact, took notice of non-conceptual modes of approaching reality, and reduced religion to a mere system of logical concepts ending in a purely negative attitude. They failed to see that in the domain of knowledge, scientific or religious, complete independence of thought from concrete experience is not possible. So, this is kind of going back to kind of a more existential rather than essentialist view. Something it's anti-classical, anti-kind of pure reason view that thought can be isolated, like you said, from biology and physiology, whereas so the Mu'tazila, conceiving religion merely as a body of doctrines and ignoring it as a vital fact. Vital here is an important word, and it's used in the sense of being full of vitality, being full of life. It's Henry Bergson talks about this a lot. So, and Iqbal is influenced and inspired, is a better word, by Bergson in this respect. So, again, it's about how Iqbal is urging us to return to a more human-centered, physiologically balanced context of being human within the environment of a whole.